Hello, eighth grade, and welcome to our lesson in second step. This is our 11th lesson. In this particular unit, we're going to focus a lot on bullying and harassment. So remember, last week we talked a lot about the environmental and social factors that contribute to bullying and harassment. How many of you remember what those social factors, what are they? So I'll give you a moment to talk about it as a class. Virtual students, you can put it in the chat and we'll discuss it as a class in a moment. I'll give you a moment, a brief moment. So at this time, I want to remind you what those social and environmental factors are. I'm going to quickly go through them. Remember, we talked about some students may feel that bullying is accepted. That's one. Power and privilege, that's another. Stereotypes and assumptions, physical space, and rules and regulations. So we talked about all those factors on last time. Today's lesson, we're going to learn how speaking up and starting a movement can disrupt the factors that contribute to bullying and harassment. So we're really going to go into detail how we can start a movement and how we can really change the environment in our school. So let's look at the very first warm up. Okay. So Chelsea or Kelsey hears a lot of gossip in the girls' bathroom. So she puts up posters with positive messages on them in the bathroom and hallways. If you think this kind of action would help stop bullying at our school, what about it makes it a really good strategy? If you don't think it will help, what do you think will be more effective? So I'll give you a moment to pull out your student handout, and you're going to write it on your student handout, or you'll discuss it as a class. I'll give you a moment. So throughout history, I really want you to think about this, and you can discuss it as a class. But for many, many years, people have worked and they have struggled to disrupt or change negative attitudes that hurt, or sometimes that can end in someone's life. The U.S. Civil Rights Movement that began in the 1940s, and it still continues to this day, is one such attempt to change beliefs and attitudes about people of color. Because of this movement, race-based segregation and discrimination was made illegal. Today, we're going to look at how we can disrupt some of those factors that contribute to bullying and harassment so we can improve our school. So I know some of you are thinking, what do you mean when you say disrupt? Disrupt means to prevent something from continuing as usual or expected. It doesn't mean it being chaotic in any way, but it is a way of challenging or changing attitudes, beliefs, traditions, or practices that make bullying and harassment socially acceptable. So let's look at some disruption strategies. So changing attitudes that lead to bullying and harassment in our school doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be difficult. It can be small, simple ways that are always meaningful. The two strategies we'll look at today are speaking up and starting a movement. Using these strategies can help you disrupt the social and environmental factors that contribute to bullying and harassment at our school. When we disrupt these factors, we create a positive school culture where bullying and harassment, they are not tolerated. Okay, so let's look at a couple of disruption strategies. Remember, These strategies can help create a more positive school culture where bullying and harassment, they're not tolerated. So we're going to click on the white dots to find out more information. So what is one strategy that you can use or we can use in our school where we're standing up and we're showing that bullying and harassment is not tolerated within our school? So speaking up. So one good example is not laughing. Don't laugh at negative comments or jokes about someone's differences or physical characteristics. Make it clear that you don't think that that is funny. So that's a really good way to stand up and a really good strategy that we can use. Let's click on the other one. So starting a movement. You can start a movement in your community or online by leading a discussion, making a poster, or starting a hashtag on social media. So these are some really good disruption strategies that we can use here in our school. So let's move on to our first activity. And so these, we're going to talk about a couple of scenarios. These scenarios is included on your student handout. Okay, let's talk about the first scenario. When Carla and Scott hang out in private, Carla mocks their mutual friend Logan's accent by talking like him. What social factor is contributing to the bullying here? What strategy could Scott use to disrupt this social factor? I'll give you a moment to talk about this as a class, and we'll discuss the possible answers. So the possible answers is for you to speak up. The factor that's contributing to the bullying in this scenario could be that it's socially acceptable to make fun of people who speak English with an accent. Scott can speak up and respectfully remind Carla that mocking Logan's accent is not okay. So those are some possible solutions. Let's look at the second activity. So you guys, if you're in the class, if you're face-to-face, you can pair up with someone or you can talk about this as a group. But this scenario is included on your student handout. I want you to choose one of the two scenarios and I want you to answer these questions. First question, what social or emotional or environmental factors might be contributing to the bullying or harassment? Number two, which disruption strategy should the students use and how? And I give you a moment to answer those questions. All right, so let's look at scenario number one. Scenario number one, which is Rodney. How could Rodney disrupt the factors contributing to the gossiping he sees on social media? How can he disrupt the factors? I give you a moment to talk about it as a class. Let's look at the possible answers. The possible answer. So a social factor, assumption that bullying is a normal part of growing up. So that's a social factor. An environmental factor is that sometimes students may feel that it's anonymous to talk about someone online. So there are no consequences to gossiping, but it is. And it's not always anonymous when you're talking about someone online. What is the strategy? The strategy is to start a movement. Rodney can make a hashtag to counter the gossip that he sees online. So that's a really good strategy for Rodney to use. Let's move over to the second scenario, which is Chris and Marissa. So how could Chris and Marissa disrupt the factors contributing to sexist comments about girls' clothing and their bodies? I'll give you a moment to discuss as a class. So these are some of the possible answers. The social factor is belief and attitude that girls who dress a certain way deserve to be ridiculed and shamed. That's a social factor. An environmental factor. Sometimes adults aren't always around to hear these comments, or nobody will get in trouble because, they're saying it in secret. So those are the social and environmental factors. What's a strategy? A strategy will be to speak up. When you hear these comments or see them online, tell people it is not funny. Okay, let's wrap everything up. Wrap everything up that we have heard from all the different scenarios. Let's look at question in the wrap up, the first question in the wrap up. Which disruption strategy can you see yourself using to disrupt the factors that contribute to bullying and harassment at our school? How could you use it? I'll give you a moment to talk about this as a class. So as we wrap up our lesson and how we're going to stand up and how we're going to speak up and how we're going to start a movement, I really want you to do a couple of things this week. I want you to look for ways you can safely speak up and start a movement to reduce bullying and harassment here at school and online. In the next lesson, next week, when we see each other again on Tuesday, we'll learn 2 more strategies that can help you make our school and community safer and more inclusive. I really enjoyed this lesson. I hope it gave you some really good strategies on how to stand up and be bold for other students that are around you. Next week, we're going to learn more strategies. I'm really excited about this unit because it has some really good strategies for you to use. I can't wait to see you on next Tuesday and have an awesome, awesome week. Bye, 8th grade. See you next week.